Hello, Rob Watson here for Decentered Media, and I'm just catching up with some, sleep on the one hand, and some thoughts as to what's been going on this week with the BBC and the resignation of the Director General. I got back from Japan on Monday after it was pretty kind of 24 hours at least of constant travel, and so last night I fell asleep at 8 p.m. and woke up at 4 a.m. But that's meant I've got a fair bit of work done. I can focus in the mornings. It's the late nights that I find it difficult to get on with any work. But there you go. So I'm kind of before I boarded the flight, everything was calm. When I got off the flight, a couple of the groups I'm involved in, WhatsApp groups and things like that, kind of had exploded with news that Tim Davies had resigned from the BBC, and I'd said a few months ago in a blog, I think it was, or in some social media posts, that I'm not particularly impressed by the kind of force of character that comes through from some of these executives, that they seem to over-project a sense of certainty and a sense of control, and they use this. I've seen this in other management circles, where it's all about, it's very personalised to them, and it's not something which is accounted for as a group or a collective effort. It's kind of they're in charge, they're the leadership, they set everything, everybody's part of his team. And I think so when you're in that circumstance, when the kind of things have gone wrong with the BBC that have gone wrong, then it's very that person has nailed their colours to the mast, as it were. And what's been interesting is it's never the event itself, it's the reaction and some of the kind of broader headless chickens running around, I suppose is the best way to describe it, of people kind of coming up with all sorts of fantasy reasons why it's a conspiracy, it's a politically motivated thing by Trump, and and these things might have an element of truth in them, otherwise they wouldn't be you couldn't expand on them. But actually, this is really a case of a kind of a long-term, multifaceted, organisational process that is just fundamentally flawed. And I think I've written a blog about this. It's kind of more akin to British Leyland in the 1970s and early 80s than it is to a cock-up theory by any individual. It's like it might at some point be triggered, but that's like an avalanche, and the stone that causes the avalanche to fall, being one particular person, is not the downfall of the BBC or one particular story or one particular mistake. It's an accumulation of these things, and you can trace them back. And my thoughts are that going back to as so many things at the moment across the board, it's the decisions that were taken in the 2010s by the Cameron, Osborne and Nick Clegg government, whereby a lot of short-term decisions were made. And one of the dreadful decisions that was made was to expect the BBC to play a role as a global creative industries platform and still serve the home audience. So what you're doing is giving two contradictory pieces of information. You telling people to go out and compete on the global market. So the BBC says, yeah, that's great, we'll set up BBC studios, we'll expand the kind of programming that's aimed at a globalised market. But all of the focus and the executive's time becomes on serving those audience. So the BBC News audience becomes North America, and they have a particular framework of the market there. It's fairly tightly supplied for, if you like, right-wing type material. So the BBC goes in on a progressive left-wing slant, and it gets them in trouble when the political fortunes of another country, and you're trying to trade in that place, and everything that you've done has been geared up towards being able to serve that audience. So what we've got in the UK is a hollowing out of the BBC, a hollowing out of what would otherwise been strong local independent journalism. Then it's combined with things like centralisation and the way that they have applied the benefit of new technology to putting everybody together in one warehouse. And then what you need to do is what they've asked the journalists and the producers and everybody at the BBC is to conform to a set of principles and statement and guidance, and so it's become a technical bureaucratic process rather than something which is a sense of public service and duty, and that there are values that you independently carry. So yeah, that kind of service, if you like, or craft, it has been devalued, and it's really now seen as a kind of a mechanical function within that can be automated and be replaced by AI and whatever else. And so the BBC's got itself in a bit of a pickle because it's been asked to serve two masters, the globalised market, and somehow maintain integrity with its journalistic foundations in a home. And you can't do the two. You've got to split them and separate them. And if you want an organisation, a homegrown media player, well, that should have been ITV's role. That should have been, maybe even Channel 4 to some extent. But you can put that out to the market, and people will take the risk and get the rewards for that. You can't really ask the BBC to do that, because the BBC's the channel of last resort for serving pensioners who don't have digital technology, but they still need a radio station, a local radio station, to get their news and information about what's happening in their towns and cities and neighbourhoods. And again, that's the kind of hollowing out, because less than 40% of material that's produced by BBC Leicester is now from Leicester for Leicester. It's regional and it's national. So again, you've got this kind of it's placated with this kind of managerialist sense. Oh, we're doing more digital stuff, but if looking at the local newspapers around here is anything to go by, then seeing that is what's your favourite packet of crisps, where can you get the best 5 bacon butties, all of that kind of nonsense. It's not actually newsworthy, and it's not serving people. So there kind of needs to be a return to purpose. And what is it for? What is our media for, and who does what, where, and when? And I think a lot of this is about letting go of control. A lot of it is about kind of stop trying to centralise, stop trying to provide everything, pick and choose what it is that you can do and do it really well, and then make sure that you're using those resources to the max, and that the people who are are capable of producing stories and investigating things and sharing and building relationships with listeners and viewers, is that they're given primacy, not the HR departments, not the spin departments, not the PR management departments, not the advertising agencies that they employ, not trying to create a wave after wave of hit and looking at the metrics and all that kind of stuff. So it's an impossible job to finish. So it's been quite amusing. Lots of flotsam and jetsam floating around online, and I think it'll settle down. But in the run-up to the charter renewal, I think it's really important that we engage with this, that we tell our stories about why civic, independent, community-focused, community-driven forms of media are really important, and that there is a possibility to build an alternative way of foundational economy style local provision that's not extractive, but it actually puts back into communities. And one of the ideas I floated this week, just as a test really, to see what kind of response I get, is that things like the Asian network, well, there's loads of Asian stations now that are commercially viable, and they're doing really well. They're expanding at the moment across DAB particularly. So why does the BBC need to continue to provide the Asian network? Could that be repurposed and generated and used to serve people who welcome? I've called it Welcome to Britain or something like that. It's like, it's where you learn what British society and culture is about in our history, both good and bad, and kind of how to operate and what the social expectations are, and you learn about that in a service which is provided almost like an adult education college of the air. The BBC used to do this. The BBC used to see itself as educate as much as entertain. and and certainly inform. So there's a role there, and just replicating things like the new radio stations, the DAB stations, Radio 3 Extra, or whatever it is that they put in place, are not really the BBC. They don't really fulfil a unique role. It's just filler for the BBC to say that they've got an extra service, or that's how it feels to me as a person who runs a station which is directly impacted by this new Radio 3 service. So lots to discuss. So if you want to talk about these kind of things with me, I'm always happy for looking for people to get involved in taking part in podcasts. Send me a message. I'm on socials at Decentered Media, or you can contact me, rob@decentered.co.uk. As I'm getting over my jet lag, I'm going to try and do more regular updates like this, just short bites, and then try and get back into doing some long form podcasts as well. So hopefully speak to you soon.